Well, good morning, Livvy's Ranger Garage friends. Today we're going to be tackling a project to replace the cab mounts on my Ranger, and I'm also going to lift the cab an inch using hockey pucks as spacers. So there's some tricks to this. I've already done the passenger side, so I could work out the details. I'll try to document the driver's side for you and show you some tips and tricks that I've learned, a special tool that I made, and hopefully help the process go easier for you that haven't done it, and let you know what it is you're dealing with when you're trying to do this project. So on the typical Ranger, as far as I know, there are 3 cab mounts on each side. One of them is right there at the rear corner, and there's also one at the front underneath the radiator support area. I hope you can see that. I'll try to brighten this up if I need to later. So that's there, and then a mid mount right here, just behind the wheel. So where basically right where the wheel well arch comes down for the front of the door, if you want to call it that. So first thing we got to do is expose these locations. The front one's easy to get to, or fairly easy, and the rear one is back here in the corner. Forgive all this other electrical. And there's a rubber cover that goes in this hole usually. So pop the rubber cover out. It looks like this. And you can see the bolt right there. And the other one is right around in this area here. So first thing we've got to do is take out this plastic trim and the kick panel trim. So let's get started with that. All right, this bottom trim here just has some Phillips head screws. Looks like that one's missing. Either that or it just broke through and the plastic broke around it. There's one. There's another. There. These screws tend to get, they're Phillips, and they tend to get rusty, and you end up with dirt and stuff down in there in the heads, so you might have to dig the dirt out. Whatever they might be, sometimes they can be a challenge to get out. These are going all right. I'll put those over in the cup holder, and there's that. We'll just lay that aside. Yeah, this other front screw really is here. It's just plastic was broken around it. Yeah, I don't really need to mess with it. All right, next, this kick panel trim is held on. There's a plastic push pin kind of thing there. I get one of these plastic body tools and get under it, and pull it out like that. So we'll lay that aside. And then we should be able to pull the kick panel trim out. And it looks like that. Now we can push the carpet to the side. or if you get the rubber flooring, that's fine. Oh, nope. Okay, I really do need to get this screw out. The carpet was hanging up on it. We'll be doing a lot of other major things to this truck here in the next couple of months. We're going to do a V8 engine swap, so watch for those videos and all the associated pieces to that. So I might take the carpet out and just paint the floor with bed liner material. I think for my purposes and the way I use the truck, that would be a lot better. And now can you see that? Not really. And let me bring you in closer. So right there, basically under the clutch and brake pedal, is that rubber plug. So we'll pull that out and the bolt will be right below it. See, I haven't done it with this before. Let's... Sorry, I'm in your way, but I don't really know a better way to film this at the moment. Let's try flat blade screwdriver. I've done it that way. Here it comes. Well, I thought. There we go. And that's out. So we'll sit that up there. And the bolt head is right there. Okay. So now we've got that. The bolt head down in there takes a 18mm wrench. So I've put a socket on there and place it on there. And I just have this, I use the long enough ratchet that it's braced up against here, and that should keep it from rotating so I don't have to hold it. If it slips off, then I'll have to do something different. And then we've got the nut on the bottom takes a 21mm. So get a wrench or socket or something to put on that. And I've got to go to the other side of the door here. Put it up under there. And then find out that you really wanted a breaker bar or a longer socket. Let me get a breaker bar real quick to get that broken loose. Alright, so I'm back. I got a breaker bar so I have more leverage. Those of you in the rust belt are going to have even more trouble than this. So whew. And that is snug. Snug, snug, snug. But it'll come. It moved a little bit. There we got some. I had sprayed these a few days ago with penetrating oil. broke loose. It's moving. There we go. There's the bolt we're trying to get out. And you would think at this point we're home free, but we're not. There's a diagram I'll show you later on about how this whole assembly goes. The rubber bushings, and there's some big washers with sleeves on them down in there. And we've got to figure out how to get them apart because they're pressed together. And for me, they're just pressed together. For many of you, they might be pressed together and severely rusted. So I've made a tool for how to deal with that, and we'll show you that here in a minute. Down in this hole underneath the head, there's a slotted washer. So that's all that's on the inside of the body. And then the rest of this is going through the rubber bushing assembly down underneath. So we got that out. Just lay that aside for now. And I'm going to do the same thing and get the rear one off. You don't need to see that. Okay, you can see the nut that I was turning on the bottom is captive. And what it is, there's a nut with a big flat washer welded on, but there's also a sleeve going up through the rubber bushing. And then there's another washer up here with a sleeve going down through the bushings, and those two sleeves are pressed together real tight. So we can spin this all day long, but it's not coming apart. You can see the rust falling and out of there and dirt. So what I did is I made a special tool Um, it looks like this here, and what it does is it's going to slide up in there, and then I'm going to put a bolt in from the bottom to engage that nut. But I'm also going to have a 21 millimeter wrench, because that's what fits here, to hold this from turning within the tool. So as I spin the bolt on the bottom of the tool and hold this steady, it's going to pull this lower sleeve out of the upper sleeve. You'll probably see it compressing the upper bushing a good bit before it starts to break free. So I put this in here, I'll loop that around that other bolt, and we'll start threading this together. And I've got a little bit of oil and grease on the threads of this bolt to help turn a little bit easier also. Oh, okay. All right, and you can see here, I'll turn that so you can see that. I just made a slot in the side of the tool, and I'll link to a drawing for the tool later on so that you can build one for yourself if you want, because I really don't know any better way. I tried on the first one I did. I tried very hard to to pry on it with pry bars and things like that, and it just did not work. Not at all. So, all right, and here's one. So this bolt I used, I actually modified a long bolt. It was a used bed mounting bolt that I had, and I cut it off to the length I wanted. I welded a nut on for the head, so that takes in 19, because it's an M12 bolt, and I used a typical size nut for that, and that's an M19 nut, and it takes a 19 millimeter wrench. Yeah, it's an M12 nut, but it takes a 19 millimeter wrench. And there we go. So I hold that, and I start turning the bolt, and I can already see that that upper bushing squashing. I should probably go up inside the cab and spray some penetrating oil down in the center of that to see if that would help make the sleeves separate easier. And so far, this isn't very hard to turn. I'm going to take a break for a second. Working upside down gets me sometimes. I could probably use the impact for this, but I'd rather kind of feel what's going on with a real wrench than do it with the impact. It's amazing how much abuse that bushing will take. This puller tool that I made is a piece of roughly 3-inch exhaust pipe from a 7.3 Power Stroke, and which you could get a chunk of that out of the junkyard pretty cheap, and then a 3/16 plate on the bottom that I welded on, and put a hole in the center, and then I just cut this slot in the side to hold the other wrench for holding the nut from turning. And there we go. We have pulled it apart. So if I take this apart like this, and there's our bolt, and there's the nut, washer, and sleeve that I was talking about. And if you look, it might be hard to see in the video, but right here at the end, it's bulged, it's peened out or whatever, and that's what makes the tight fit. And like I said earlier, if those of you in the rust belt areas, you've also got rust in there to deal with. I don't have much rust. I'm pretty fortunate here in South Carolina. At that point, the lower bushing comes out, and you can see the bottom of the upper sleeve. So once we get everything loose, I'll lift the body, and then we have to lift the body high enough so that that whole length of that sleeve and washer has room up above the mount to slide out. So let me go ahead and do the rear one, and then we'll tackle the front, because the fronts are different. They're a similar assembly, but they're different, and they're even a bit more difficult to deal with, but my tool doesn't help. I'll show you a different trick for those. The front is put together a little bit differently, and I showed you about where it is, and you access the top. You can access with extensions down through this hole. And I'm showing you the passenger side because it's easier right now. But there's the bolt right down there. That's not the original bolt. That's just an extra bed bolt that I put in there temporarily because I had to go get longer bolts for these, since I'm putting spacers on when I put it back together. So you can see I've got an extension here with a socket, and that's the 18mm side is down there. That's actually the nut with the washer on that part. So what we're going to have is on the bottom, we're going to have the bolt head here. There we go. That's a little hard to get to. Oh. So here's the bolt head on the bottom. That's going to take a 15mm socket, and you might even see the extension coming down through from the top up there. So we're right here. If I back up a little bit, here's the front cross member, radiator core support, radiator core support, front cross member, and the front bumper, of course. Here's our frame rail. So right there. So let me get set up here, and we'll take this bolt out from the bottom. That's the easy part, believe it or not. Top side. That might hold. Just put a ratchet handle, and it's, at the moment, it's stuck against the hood prop rod. Now, it's gonna fight me. It's gonna fight me. All right, hang on. All right, I finally got set up. I had to get a different length extension, and I do something else to help or make it so I can hold the upper wrench easier. And actually I'm holding it with my hand at the moment. I'm just pulling and turning on the bottom. It's fighting, but I'm not fighting against the resistance of the rubber right now. This is just old rusty bolts and probably Loctite from the factory. Let me spray something up. No, I don't have anything to spray there. No, we just got to fight it. And maybe what I should do, I should let the tire hold that. I'll turn the top, since the top is really the part that, there we go. The bottom's going to stay there. And we're going to have to deal with that another way. There we go. Now it's coming. And on this top side, you're spinning a wrench close to the battery, so be careful with that. I think we might be loose. Let me just spin it by hand a little bit more. Then we'll reach up there and see if we can pull that out. All right. Oh, that's right. So, I think what we had, yeah, we had a nut. You probably saw it fall out. So this nut is what was on the top. We still have the bolt. The bolt's coming in from the bottom on these. And it's threaded into the upper sleeve. So this one has a lower sleeve and an upper sleeve, just like the others. But on this one, the upper sleeve has internal threads. So the bolt is going through the bottom sleeve and bushing up into the threads in the upper sleeve. And that's what we got to fight next. This is not the fun part of the job. All right, I'm back. One thing I've done is, you'll see my jack here, and I have gone ahead, since we got all the bolts out on this side, I've lifted the body. Now be careful when you do this. First of all, you want to make sure you're supporting it on a strong rib. At the moment I've got it on, there's a cross rib right here. It's hard to see in this light. So I've got it right there. Don't just push up on flat sheet metal. You'll bend it. You'll break something. The other thing is watch out for places where there's cables and hoses and things like that that are attached to the body and attached to the frame, because you do not want to pull something and rip a wire in half or anything like that. So as you're doing it, give a good inspection. If there's any place where you need to take zip ties loose or other clamps and things, do that, so that you've got room to lift this without hurting anything. You can see I've got almost 2 fingers width of distance in there between the top of this bushing and the rib that I'm lifting on. So that's going to help, and that's going to help us a lot on the front here. Like I said, this is not one of the fun parts. Let's get the dirt out from away from that, and let's get some penetrating. I'm using liquid wrench today. It's not my favorite penetrant, but that's what I've got handy today, so that's what I'm using. I'm not going to get into a debate on penetrating oils. Everybody's got opinions on it. My favorite is one called Kroil, K-R-O-I-L. They also make an aerosol version called Aero Kroil, and I haven't had that in a while. It's kind of expensive, but aside from that, PB Blaster is probably my second favorite, and then this liquid wrench or WD-40. Actually, WD-40 before liquid wrench. So that's just my personal preferences. Now, as I told you before, this nut, or this is the bolt, and we've got a washer here, and the washer has a sleeve on it. The sleeve is going up inside the upper sleeve, which is attached to this washer, but this upper sleeve is threaded, so we have to somehow hold this tight, or hold this from turning, while we rotate the bolt out of the bottom. So again, that's our 15mm socket, and what I found on the other side, and I didn't have the body lifted up like this to make it easier, but I found on the other side I was able to get this with a pipe wrench. So let's try that. All right, that's holding. You are recording. Okay, and let's see what we get here. Yeah. And it's turning. We're getting somewhere. This is going easier than the first side did. Mostly because I know what I'm doing now, and I got this thing, I got the body lifted out of the way better. More oil. I'm not afraid to use some oil on this stuff. I'm gonna fight with this. You see the idea. You're just gonna have to work the rest of the details out yourself. But it'll work. I'll come back to you when I get this finished. I'll tell you what, for this part, for these front mounts, if you've got a friend that can come over and help you, it's well worth the price of buying him lunch. It's well worth it. I just don't have anybody handy. So here is how this comes apart. So below the body mount bracket, we had this bushing, and actually that doesn't have a sleeve. There's a big flat metal washer here. I'll pull that off to use with the new bushing. So that was up in, and then there's our there's that inner sleeve I was talking about that's threaded. Now to put this back together, I'm going to do it differently, and I'm going to drill those threads out so that the bolt passes straight through easy without, and just have the nut hold it on the bottom. Here's the top part. So you can see it's even kind of funnel shaped. Let me get the dirt out of there. There you go. It's a little bit funnel shaped in here, and then next down to where those threads are. So this comes out of your upper bushing like that. And there's also this plate here, and that doesn't fit on my new bushing, so I'm not going to use it. I don't think it's that important. You can see this one's a little bit rusted. But so that's it. And then and then this all went up through, and we had that nut and washer on the top. So that's how that goes together. One thing I'm doing, which is common with some people, is I'm adding a 1-inch body lift while I do the new the new body mount bushings today. The reason I'm doing that is because that gives me extra room for my V8 engine swap. So first thing I'm going to do is I ordered a box of a dozen hockey pucks. They don't cost much of anything. Just order them online and find the center. I've just got a center finder square here, and if I do this, make 3 lines like this that intersect. They should all intersect at the center, and they do. Even if they don't, if it leaves a little bit of a gap, you know that gap in the center is the center. And this doesn't have to be extremely critical anyways. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact. So I'll mark that on all 3 of these. Just scribe, rotate, scribe, rotate, scribe, rotate, until you get your 3, and that gives you your center. So this is real simple, and you can get a cheaper center finder thing. I've got a plastic one that I bought years ago when I was in the rocketry hobby, and that's in another toolbox, and that would work nice. So there we go. I'll put this away, and I got my first one in there, and I'll scrunch it down. I don't want to squeeze too hard, then I'll get way off center. And I'll just go slow speed. I'm also going to hold this with my fingers, and I just feed real slow. Back up a little bit, clear the chips. And there we have it. Our first one is drilled. So we'll do 3 of those. I already did the other side the other day. That looks pretty good. rubber, or at least as far as I know, that's all they are. So this is very easy to drill. And there we go. And with that, we'll get our new bushings and go back out to the truck and start our reassembly. Okay, let's put things back together. One thing I'm doing is all the metal and neoprene or rubber or whatever these things, these new bushings are, where they all touch and where they're going to be together, I'm putting a little light coating of grease on there. I'm using super lube because that's usually pretty safe with these type of rubber and plastic products. And I'm hoping that'll help keep the moisture out and reduce rusting in the future. So I've put the upper sleeve in the upper bushing and slide that down in there. And then if I'm lucky, no, not yet. Let me lift the body just a little bit more. Let's see if that's enough. There we go. And we'll put our bolt down in there. Now I had to get longer bolts for mine since I'm adding the hockey puck spacers to lift my body a little bit. And I'm going to put the bolt from the top down on this front one, which is not how it was originally. I'd prefer it this way. Like I said, in that upper, where that upper sleeve was threaded, I've drilled that out. So, okay, you can see we slide right up through. Actually, didn't think about that, but I can get lined up, get my hockey puck hole lined up there, and that's pretty good. So I've got that. Now I can drop the bolt down through, make sure that upper slotted washer is in place. And, it is, because I didn't even take it out. Or maybe I took it out and showed you and put it back. But there we go. You see our bolt came down through. And let's see if this is long enough. I've got two different length bolts. Oh, that's going to work nicely. Okay. So I'm going to put that together. Let me clean the grease off these threads, because I'm going to put a little blue Loctite and use a lock nut on these. So there we go. That should clean off those threads nice. And I'm just going to put this together just loosely to start it. And since that's an M12 screw and a common nut, that'll take a 19mm socket later, or a wrench. So now our front one is reassembled loosely. Let's go do some more. What you gotta do is make sure you pay attention to all the parts you had originally, because for some reason these middle two had some shims in them. The middle mount on both sides is what I'm trying to say. So, and I forgot to put the shims back in. But luckily they were laying right here where I could see them. and know that they're not in. So it's 2 washers. They're kind of beveled in the center, so they fit nice down inside the bevel in here, just like that. And then we'll put that back in, try to center it, and now we'll put our bolt back down through. And of course, try to line everything up. That should be a little better. Let's see if I can get it through. There it goes. And then we'll bring our bottom piece on up, and I think I need to let the body back down and reach in there and hold the bolt so it doesn't spin. So, just like this. So I might be able to turn that by hand first for a little while. And not with greasy hands. But the rest of this is just tightening down the bolts, and I don't honestly know a torque setting for them. I believe these sleeves on these rear ones bottom out on each other. I'm not sure about the front, so I think that's going to help me determine whether it's tight enough or not. But you know how to tighten bolts. You reach in, you hold one side, you tighten the other, and when you're done, you're done. So hang on a second. Alright, so like I said, aside from tightening bolts, and I'm going to put a little bit of blue Loctite on those nuts, so I got to take this back off and clean it too. This is how we do it. There's a new bushings with a 1-inch hockey puck spacer. That's the middle one under the under your feet when you're driving. There's the front up by the radiator core support, and here's, I don't know if you can see it or not. Yeah, the back one's up in there. So anyways, that's all there is to the job. Make sure everything's snug and tight. Make sure you didn't pinch or pull or rip any hoses or wires. There are 2 things I forgot to mention when I recorded the video. One is I finally decided on a torque for the bolts, and I went with about 60 foot-pounds. That may be a little much. It might not be quite enough, but that should be pretty good. They're only M12 bolts. But you can adjust that also. I found out that as you're torquing the bolts, you can actually bend and flex the cab a little bit, and it will affect your door alignment. So adjust a little bit as necessary if you need to do that, or don't do that if your door hinges are worn out. Go ahead and replace the door hinges first before you make any other adjustments. And it might be better to just adjust the door hinges. The other thing is, before you tighten the bolts, take some measurements from the face of the frame out to an edge, an easily identifiable edge on the body. Do that on both back corners, and do it on the front. And make sure that your body is straight and centered on the frame. While the bolts are loose, you can push the body side to side and twist it or turn it as necessary to make sure it's centered and straight on the frame. So go ahead and do that. And that's it. Now we've got another inch of elevation of space in the engine bay for when we do the V8 swap. If you're not doing that, you don't need the spacer. Just do the bushings and you'll have good new bushings for a few years. So, and there's my V8 donor, 96 Explorer. So, have a good day.